everyone, and welcome to the Climate Career Kit podcast. This is your host, Aishni Garg. If you are a high schooler looking for direction in climate change-related careers, tune in to every episode for advice from the diverse leaders in climate jobs today and learn about new and exciting opportunities that you can pursue. Today's guest is Matthew Karmel, an environmental lawyer at Offit Kurman. We are so excited to have you for the 5th episode of the Climate Career Kit. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks.
So to get right into it, what does your job look like on a day-to-day basis?
So I'm the head of the Environmental and Sustainability Law Group at Offit Kurman. Offit Kurman is a full-service law firm with offices across the United States. My role is in working on environmental matters for the firm. So that means working on, to high schoolers, it means supporting various businesses in issues that relate to environmental law. That's kind of like the really piece, but it's so much more helpful to break it up into what do I actually do. So, environmental law and climate change, jobs, I find, have a lot of components. They're kind of like a lot of things put together. So I do work with renewable energy projects, siting, developing, and helping with regulatory issues. And just to break that down a step further for high schoolers, as a lawyer, I don't do like the business aspects of it, but renewable energy projects need to go somewhere. So they need a contract, usually a lease or a purchase agreement, to be able to be put on a rooftop or on a piece of property, like on a land. And then, when you need money to build something, you need a financing agreement. So I help with all of those legal intersections to these, projects. And that's not just the renewable energy industry. I do work with the waste and recycling industry. I do work with just, site remediation and redevelopment. I do work with manufacturing industry. So it's helping all of those areas with whatever legal issues arise, whether they're dealing with litigation or agreements or regulations proposed by governments. It's interacting and facilitating all of those aspects of the projects.
That's a really interesting job. So as I'm in high school and exploring what options I have for environmental professions, what about this field specifically drew you to it?
So it kind of happened backwards. So I was in law school, and I got to law school by realizing that, having been a math whiz sort of through high school and college and thinking that I was going to use that to go into finance, I realized that I hated math and that I didn't want to go into finance. So I tried to figure out, what job do I really like? I went to work at a law firm, not an environmental law firm. I said, oh, this is good. I like this. It fits my skills. It's analytical, which is what I liked about math. But, at some point I stopped liking the higher level maths. So I sort of broke it down to what were the components of the things I liked about the education I was going through, and then found a job that matched with some of them and tested those assumptions. And then while I was in law school, someone suggested that I try environmental law. And I tried it. I really liked it because it has a lot of diversity in what you're doing. It's really tangible because you're helping the environment. So it's both interesting, demanding, and meaningful, all at once. So that's what sort of drew me to it at that point. But then even at that point, I was doing very traditional environmental law focused on cleaning up contaminated property, and supporting that, doing the legal aspects of supporting that. And I realized that I felt like I would feel more fulfilled, more challenged, more meaning if I went and was able to do more sustainability minded things. Working on renewable energy, working on waste and recycling, working on on the whole host of different things that falls under the umbrella of sustainability and climate. So I started to pursue that as an avenue and have been able to shift my career towards that.
That makes a lot of sense. Kind of going off of that, what was your inspiration for starting your newsletter?
So I run a newsletter called the Planetary Lawyer Project, which tries to show other lawyers how to do more climate friendly work, no matter what their job is, whether an environmental lawyer or not an environmental lawyer, whether they're labor and employment, because there are lots of different types of lawyers. They do lots of different types of things. But my belief is that every one of them can help climate because the skills that climate companies need and the skills that are needed to advance climate solutions are very diverse. Um, and 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 so we need all these different projects. We need software developers. We need project managers. We need marketers. Like all of those roles exist in the climate industry. So I wanted to show other lawyers that no matter what you do, you can work on climate because it's been so great for my career also. It's been very meaningful. It's helped me to advance my career, but it hasn't happened all at once. It was a very gradual, long-term, you know, change is gradual and not gradual at the same time always. It advances, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, then you huge jump, and then a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. Sometimes you go backwards and forwards, but but I wanted to show other lawyers how I'm doing it, what I'm doing, and hope that it inspired and helped. And I certainly don't have everything figured out, but I wanted to share the lessons that I've learned and everything so that anyone else who wanted to do what I'm doing didn't have to start from zero. They could look at my model, look at what I see, and look at what I'm doing and do that. And then I'm sure they'll inspire me along the way to do whatever I'm going to do next.
That's incredibly cool. Honestly, I'm kind of trying to do the same thing with the podcast, like with my classmates who don't have direction or don't know where they're going. And I'm learning from this too. So, what is something that you were really excited to work on?
It was a dream of mine to get to work in the renewable energy industry, and it was something that wasn't that easy to find a way into at first. And I think this is something that's helpful to high school students, just as a general principle. If there's somewhere you want to go, it doesn't mean that you have to go right there. You can do something else along the way. So, I've been able to work on some really exciting and groundbreaking renewable energy projects, and to provide some really strong advice to those projects and really be on the cutting edge, because that's one of the things that I really like is being on the cutting edge, being able to use the skills that I have to give counsel on something that isn't clear. So it's being involved in those projects and being at the cutting edge of this sustainability intersection of sustainability and law.
That sounds really exciting. Um, is there something that surprised you about your current role?
I've always thought that whatever role you're in when you start your formal career, it changes about every 6 months. um, that kind of like you go through the process, and when I started as a lawyer, the first 0 to 6 months was one career, and 6 months to a year, it just sort of changes. But I think that the career change that I made, I went from being a junior attorney, I mean, at a mid-sized firm, to leading an environmental and sustainability group at a very very large firm. The job has changed, I think, much more rapidly. So it's the expansion and how rapidly things change that surprised me.
Yeah. As my audience is mostly high schoolers, what advice do you have for someone considering a career in environmental law?
So it's a long road to environmental law, and I think my first advice would be figure out why you want it and really get clear about what your goal is, because your goal probably isn't to be an environmental lawyer. Maybe it is, but your goal is probably to be involved in climate or environment, to be an advisor, like you have these more feeling based goals that you go, oh, being an environmental lawyer might satisfy that, and give me the lifestyle I want. If you say, okay, because there's nothing wrong as a high schooler looking and saying, I think that I'm going to want to live a certain type of lifestyle, so I'm going to want a career that's a certain type, so I would look at the feeling based things that you that you want, see whether they actually match up with environmental law. But that's not really what you're asking. That's gut checking whether you want to go into an environmental law in the first place. But for someone who wants to consider a career in environmental law, I would talk to environmental lawyers. I would also get involved in non-legal environmental advocacy issues and advocacy and environmental issues, like joining local conservation groups or things like that. Now, not all environmental careers are in that conservation model or things like that. I'd say a lot of them are not, but you want to sort of just get exposure to the area, see what it's like. And I think that that's a really important advice in general, just understanding all the options that are out there and being involved in something on that kind of deep level can help you to make sure this is where you want to go, and also to help you to keep moving towards that goal.
Of course, yeah. Going off the last question a little bit, are there any resources or opportunities that you can direct high schoolers to who are interested in your career?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are, you know, usually sort of like clubs, organizations that you can get involved in your high school, whether that debate club or different companies that relate to legal skills. And I think that's a great place to start for resources. And then there's also, state and local attorney organizations. They're usually called bar associations. And so that's something that can be done. And there are student memberships in most of those organizations. The American Bar Association is a US-based national lawyers organization that has student memberships, and also environmental sections, so committees, that kind of stuff within it. And I would sort of look for those resources, and move in that direction of getting in part of these communities that are focused on these issues. And then again, going back to the other question, getting involved in conservation groups, I think, or whatever environmental area that you're interested in, renewable energy industry groups, waste and recycling industry groups, any type of climate industry group that you're interested in, there will be lawyers in those groups. So just networking with them, I think, will provide you with those resources.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. And to all the listeners, make sure to tune in to the next episode of the Climate Career Kit.